Okay, you are live.
Right. Thanks, Sarah. I'm sure you all have received the agenda for the evening. I apologize, all my electronics seem to not be wanting to work for me today. I don't have much to discuss. I don't know if my colleagues do. I just had a few things that I wanted to touch on a little bit, mainly about personnel and the hiring. And how it aligns with the fire department, and seeing how we can think about how to make sure that both departments are aligning the same as it relates to hiring practices. I did speak with, I think he's a chief now, Leon Henderson. I don't want to get titles wrong here. And I asked them a little bit about their hiring practices over there. And he told me that it's the test, physical agility, background, polygraph, interview, psychological exam. I know one thing that we did talk about in our last committee meeting, we talked about the psychological exam, and maybe not waiting so late in the process to do that. And maybe even still with the polygraph test, not waiting so long in the process to do that. So if any of you all could talk a little bit about that and how we could possibly get to a point where both are somewhat aligning, but may both need tweaked a little bit along the way as it relates to polygraph and the psychology exam.
I guess I'll start with the psychological exam. Psychological and medical exams have to be given post conditional job offer. And our processes, both on fire and police, are set up where conditional job offers are given after the command staff has interviewed them, which is after the background process has been done. Because of federal law, you cannot give a psychological or medical exam unless there's been a conditional job offer given. So that's why it's done post everything else. As far as the hiring process with fire and police, they're almost identical. Some of the standards may be a little bit different, but the process itself, other than currently fire does not do polygraphs, that may be changing, I hear. Everything else is basically the same. They actually use our personal history statement to gather their information. Their background investigators have been trained in our background investigation classes. So they're almost identical at this point. We can't hear you.
A little difficult on the phone, sorry. So on theirs, where they do a physical agility test, I don't see any mention about the drug testing part. So is theirs incorporated with the physical? Is it like you take your physical and you take the drug test immediately?
Theirs is just like ours. And those are all functions of HR. But after the physical assessment, for police and fire, there is a drug screening. And the candidates do not move on to the background process until after that drug screening.
Okay.
At least in the police, as soon as they get done with the physical, and how it's probably like this with the fire too, as soon as if they're successful in the physical part of it, they immediately go over to a trailer set up and they do the drug screen right then and there. So there's no delay in that. It's right after they have a successful passing of the physical.
So we talked about this last week. I just don't want us to keep beating the same horse. Is there a reason why the drug test is not given before the physical? I understand as you talk about the psychological evaluation and that being federally mandated. But I don't think the drug tests and the agility tests are mandated in such a way where we couldn't transpose those maybe, because it seems like what's the point of doing a physical agility test if they can't pass the drug test?
It all comes down to money. As if you have a bigger group pre-physical agility, there's people that fail the physical agility. So as we screen those people out to move on in the process, we drug screen them. If you were to drug screen a group right before the physical agility, you're not going to get those results back for days. And if they do come up positive, you've tested and wasted time testing them for a physical assessment test. So it makes more sense after the physical agility testing.
Say that part again. That last part you said.
The drug screening makes more sense post physical fitness. Okay, because now you've completed both components of what HR says that you need to pass to successfully go on to the background process. So that drug screening is kind of like the last process before the background process starts. And that's how you weed some of those candidates out that may be using illicit drugs.
So you're saying you save more money by doing the physical before the drug screen?
Yes. Why would you don't want to drug screen 300 people when only 250 people are going to make it past the physical fitness testing. See what I'm saying? So it's 50 tests you didn't have to do or didn't have to conduct. And they're like $22 a person to get them screened, or in that ballpark.
So maybe we're looking at this a little differently, because for me, I would think it would be the opposite. If you knew you have to walk into a job and give a drug test in order to be hired, and you know you can't pass the drug test, why would you show up?
People do that all the time. They know initially at the application, it tells you there's going to be have to pass a drug screening. We are transparent with that. We tell you you're going to have to pass a drug screening at some point. And in some cases, you'll have to pass several drug screenings, or at least 2.
And what kind of drug screening is that? Is that urine? Is it hair? Is it blood? What kind of drug screening are they doing?
Typically, it's urine. But if we can't get the urine, we will go to other means.
And if it's urine, what are we testing for?
Well,
those are the panels are the same panels we would test for any police officer, any fireman, which are listed in our contracts. It's done by SUMA. We can contact them to get a list, or I have a list I can pass along. I don't have it with me right now. But it includes your marijuanas, your cocaines, your amphetamines. Yes.
Are you testing for steroids?
No, we do not, but no, we do not.
Okay.
Tara, it's my understanding that steroid testing is incredibly expensive, and I think they save those tests for when there might be a particular reason for us to believe in the course of an investigation that that's necessary. So I think that's the reason why they don't do it as a course of practice in hiring, is because it is so expensive.
Okay.
Am I wrong? Is that right, Al?
Yes, we do not test for steroids during the hiring process.
Okay, if you could get a list to myself, Brad, and Jeff as far as the panels and what's on the panels, I'd appreciate that. And so, Brad or Jeff, do you have anything to add to that? I'm flipping through my phone because on the cell phone, I only have 4 boxes on each. Oh, better repair, Tara. Okay. So yeah, if we could get that information, I'd appreciate it. And if we could talk a little bit more about culture. Um, I have a couple departments that are going to send me over some information about some culture initiatives that they're uh, partaking in their departments. As soon as I get it, I'm going to forward it to you all. I'm sure I have everyone's emails, but if we're talking about reimagining, and I think we talked a little bit about this last meeting, was the culture. And I think we missed a little bit about when I talked about just the camaraderie amongst the officers, not how they're relating on the street, but how they're in-house and how is that going, and how do we change that culture to make it a good, positive working environment for everyone. And if there's something that you all see that may be missing that we don't know about because you all are the officers, if we could talk a little bit about that as we're trying to, look at this through a wider lens, and how to be more transparent, what that would look like to you all. And again, I'll send over the things that are sent to me once I receive them. I've asked for them. It's been a couple weeks. I haven't gotten them yet. Anyone?
Captain Beitzel, you want to touch on culture since you run a shift?
I can touch on it, but I'm not sure what we're looking for here. I guess, are we under the assumption that there's a negative culture, or are we just, I'm not sure what the question is here. I'm sorry.
Well, I can't say it's a negative culture because I don't work over there. I worked in the courthouse for 8 years, but only as a bailiff. I've visited several of the floors over there where I have officer friends, but I wouldn't be able to speak to that culture because I'm not an officer. But what I will say is, when I do talk to some officers, black and white, there seems to be some who feel like there is some issues as it relates to culture there. But that could be anywhere. That could be over where we are in council. I'm just trying to figure out, is there something that we don't know, we don't see, that maybe you all can interject in this reimagining our police department, and something that you think would be a positive for you all to include in that?
I guess at my level as a captain, they're not going to bring those smaller concerns my way. So I don't mean to say it like that. Not as a because I run a shift and I'm the captain, they're not going to want to bring those types of concerns to me, and as it, in terms of the way people get along on the shift. So I mean, I would be happy to move that down the ranks in order to get a better answer for that. It's not that I'm out of touch. It's just that I mean, everybody at least on my shift seems to get along. They seem to not have those kind of issues. Everybody does the bantering and the harassing that is commonplace among, among police officers. I don't hear of any culture issues. Nothing's made its way into my office, but that's not to say that some people don't have some issues. And then it could be that maybe there are folks that maybe don't understand why administration makes decisions the way that they do, and could perceive that as something that is negative. I guess I would have to see what you're going to put forth to us, and then maybe I can have a better answer. I'm not trying to talk around it. I just don't understand, what I can offer to that. I don't see the issue.
Down here in the training bureau too, and I too would say too, I'm not really sure. As Chris said, I'd like to see Captain Beitzel, what some of those other things that you talked about. But down in the training bureau, I mean, we are always, what we do is what we try to push is the teamwork aspect of it, that we're all on one big team. And we really go back to, just our fundamental why you became a Akron police officer, is to interact with the community, to be open, transparent, trust, competent. And do people complain about some things? Yes. Sometimes they complain about the shifts, about not enough movement in the police department, some normal things like that. But I mean, I don't hear it down here either. And we try to really be positive. We think, can we, we're doing a good job. Can we do better? Sure. Yes, we can. And we're trying. But as far as like I said, a negative culture, I don't see that down here in the training bureau. And that's not what we're pushing out to our officers during our training. I'll give you an example. We are doing right now an in-service, and some of the subjects we're teaching are, we are wanting open dialogue. You know what I mean? We have to educate ourselves. Sometimes the officers might not agree with, something that we're teaching. We're teaching, some legal updates and things like that. But I mean, we're pushing out, hey, everyone has a voice. You can talk. But at the end of the day, our job is to be professional, to represent the city of Akron and the Akron Police Department in a positive manner. And that's really, at the end of the day, that's what it's got to be.
And I'll just add one thing is I think that right now, if you're going to hear any negativity, it's just going to be in the general opinion about the mood across the nation toward law enforcement. That can weigh heavy. But internally, and I know we discussed that a little bit, but if we're talking about internally, I think that we do a pretty good job. But we're not perfect by any stretch. If there are issues, I'm not hearing about it in terms of culture, though.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we also need to be careful when we get information, and we can't share it with the host. We're not going to share it with the whole subcommittee. It's hard for us to answer these questions, and I actually like to go back to Madam Chair's interview on September 30th with the press, where it was mentioned that minority representation in Akron Police Department is not where it should be, and it starts at recruiting and hiring. I want to address that. And you mentioned credit checks and a marijuana arrest when applicants were younger. And I've been involved in the hiring process for 19 years in different capacities, and I have no knowledge of any applicant that's ever been removed or disqualified because of a credit check. Credit checks are tools that investigators use to vet applicants. Credit reports provide important information related to civil suits, residency, residency is one of the things that we have to confirm because the city gives points on it. It allows us to confirm employment. It also allows us to distinguish between poor credit and grossly negligent or criminal behavior. You can take credit out without, you can have credit advanced to you, and when you take that credit out, knowingly know that you're never going to pay for something, and that amounts to theft. So credit is important, but we have never disqualified someone on derogatory credit alone. It just doesn't happen. And there are statutes that cover that. I would not allow it to happen. I know that the people that preceded me that were commanders of the unit would not allow that to happen. So I wanted to address that. I don't want misnomers put out there because someone said something. Drug use. We judge drug use by the type of drug and how long ago it was used. We look at past behaviors and how they relate to the job. There's a good possibility if a candidate used drugs at one time and has stopped, they will not be disqualified. Okay. Now, if there has some type of felony drug conviction, that's an automatic disqualifier. There's not much we can do about that. A large part of our candidates are disqualified because of lack of candor, because they lie about drug use or they lie about employment history. So that's what it is. This is a very intrusive process, and it makes our candidates, our applicants, very uncomfortable. And they do not want to disclose past mistakes to strangers. I know it would make me highly uncomfortable to disclose to strangers some of the mistakes I made in the past. But again, most commonly, people are disqualified because of significant red flags in their backgrounds. Now you've told your friends, your family that, hey, I'm applying to be an Akron police officer. I'm going through the background process. And then you've been disqualified. And how are you going to save face? You're going to say, well, because I smoked weed. They got rid of me because I smoked weed. Or they got rid of me because I didn't pay my bills on time. That is not true. That has not happened.
Well, I appreciate that. Anything that I may have said to the press, I would never say anything that wasn't brought to me in a professional setting or someone reaching out to me. I'm not going to discuss individuals who have come to me and their concerns by name, but I will say that some of these individuals, I'm not the only council person that they've come to with these concerns. It's been something that's been it's happened quite often, and then we see an officer who wasn't accepted from Akron end up at another department because they didn't talk about them having a marijuana charge, or maybe they had a bad credit, or maybe they filed bankruptcy. Neither here nor there. I would never report anything that I didn't get from a factual source. That I never do. And again, from someone who actually am the only council person who comes from the courthouse system, who've worked with many of these officers and detectives for 8 years. I hold that system in a high regard. I don't get on the bandwagon with all this other stuff that goes on, because I have several friends that I love dearly who are officers. So I want to make that clear on the record. I don't do that. I don't.
I appreciate that. And on the record, the hiring process is a closed circle. What officers tell you that have not been in that circle, they don't know. They hear things. They hear things from other people. But you're not going to get information from my background investigators. The command staff's not going to put out information. And I definitely am not going to put out information about a candidate because it is confidential. Okay. If a candidate feels, or if someone has come to you and says they've been treated unfairly, let's sit down. And if they want to release their records, or they want to see their records and bring someone in with them, we'll show them. We'll show them why they were removed. The removal process is done through HR. Again, I mentioned previously in 2018, we revamped our process. The removal process, anybody that's removed or disqualified, there's a process where the HR and the HR director removes that person. And it's on information that we provide, but it's his decision. So I think we need to be fair. There's misnomers. There's stuff that's going on and going out there that people don't know what they're talking about. And I invite the subcommittee to come. I'll show you the process. We'll look at it. You'll get a better understanding. It's hard to explain via teleconference. And if we're going to change it for the better, everybody needs to be on the same footing.
Well, I agree with that. Absolutely. But again, these meetings are to be held so we can change these norms that we are now discussing that are going on, and they all not only relate to personnel transparency, it talks about culture as well. So if you have a culture where you have officers who feel certain things are going on and they're not being discussed, it leads to these conversations. So, you know, when we say that there's not a culture problem, clearly there's a culture problem when you have these issues like this. So, Jeff or Brad, do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, Madam Chair, if I could speak. obviously I was involved in this for a long time. I think that the process is well done. That's why the fire department actually started to mirror what the police department's doing. And it's very thorough. It's very fair. I know I did a tremendous amount of backgrounds over my career. And I think that that a lot of people do say things, because I've experienced the same within the time I was with the fire department, that people made statements that they were removed, which were incorrect. They were not correct. And I agree with the lieutenant about that. So it's people don't want to be embarrassed, and sometimes that's what transpires the way they explain them. Thank you.
I assume, like, whenever someone, excuse me, in the first interview or whatever, like they're told, you know, an automatic disqualifier is if you lie to us. You know what I'm saying? I mean, just to be transparent, just to say, you know, the biggest disqualifier for you is not going to be maybe something you did in the past, you know, where you kind of slipped up or whatever. But if you lied, it's an automatic. I mean, I assume that's part of the process. I don't know. I've never applied to be a police officer, so I don't know.
That is definitely part of the process. That's something we preach from the application phase all the way through the background phase. It's on our website. We talk about telling the truth, and candor, lack of candor, misrepresentation is the number 1 reason why you will be disqualified. And they know it up front. It's on our personal history statement when they sign their declaration. That will disqualify you, lying, period.
Gotcha.
Yes, as it should. But this is, I don't know, maybe I'm going down a different path and a different street, because it seems like the things that I perceive as issues, you all don't. So maybe I should just have get a more clear understanding from your point of view of how you think things are, because when we talk about reimagining and we're working on personnel and culture, we seem to keep going around culture. We talk about personnel, but we keep going around culture as if it's not a problem or it doesn't exist. And I think that troubles me.
Sarah, can I answer that, please, just for
Yes.
a second? So if I'm hearing you correctly, there are some officers or some people that you have had professional relationships with in the police department that have come to you and have shared things to you that you find distressing or disturbing, something that they're not happy with or they perceive as a culture issue. And without knowing what those are, obviously I can't speak to each one of them, but I will say in my position as a command officer in this police department, knowing that we have 450 some or however many officers we have now, and administration can't always tell everybody why every single decision is made. And sometimes people just don't understand. When I was an officer, I can remember being frustrated all the way up through with decisions that were made, and would probably regularly complain to whoever chose to listen, because I didn't understand why those decisions were made, because my span was so much smaller than my scope was so much smaller than it is now. So not to say that there's not an issue. I would hope that we've developed enough of a culture that if there is an issue, they could go to the FOP if they don't want to go to their administrative, their captain or the lieutenant or anybody that's above them. But whatever it is, obviously we want to work toward solving whatever issues are making folks not happy, if that's the case. But that being said, we all know that we're not going to make everybody happy all the time. This is a police department. This is 400 and some, people. I don't know anybody that can make 400 and some people happy all the time.
Thank you for that. In doing some research, there's this article written by a retired officer. I'm going to send this all to you. I think it's important for us to read it, and then maybe I won't feel like maybe I'm going down a different lane than everyone else. But one of the things that Barry Reynolds says in this article that he wrote, he says, when those shared values and underlying assumptions include a collective resistance to change, the organization's members become conditioned to perceive that efforts toward change are inconsistent with their needs. They then have little motivation to support change efforts, and the person whose job it is to create change faces significantly more difficult tasks. To counteract cultural resistance to change, the police leader must first create shared values and underlying assumptions that will align the organizations with the leader's efforts to implement change. And I know when we talk about this, and like you mentioned, everyone's not going to be happy when you do things in a certain way. You're not going to please everyone, and we all understand that. But I think that if there's an effort put forth to talk to officers in a private kind of way, maybe where it doesn't seem like they're being blackballed or centered out, to talk to them about, do you think there's an issue? Do you think that we are in need of a cultural change around here? And if it's done to a point where they don't feel like they're going to be ostracized for it, I think a lot more of them would be willing to talk about those issues instead of feeling like they have to go outside of that and talk about it. But this article that's written here is phenomenal, and I definitely want to send it to you all, because it really, you know, it stood out to me. Out of all the things that's been sent to me that I've read, it was like they hit on things where he said a lot of people are not willing are wanting change. They want to keep things as is, even if they know it's making a lot of people around them uncomfortable and dissatisfied. And then they dive into that. And I think that we need to really look at that part of it, because we can talk about the personnel part, but in order to keep a good officer there, we have to make sure that the work environment and the culture is conducive to keeping those officers there. But, you know, that's just my take on it. I don't know what you all think about that, but I'm definitely going to send you all these articles and things that were sent to me from other departments, because I think, again, like I said last meeting, that we have an opportunity to do something phenomenal here, even if it's going to make a couple people uncomfortable, where we can have other departments across the state and across the country mirror those things. We have things that we do here in Akron in our police department that other departments are mirroring. We have one of the best CIT units that I know of. I know a lot of those officers, and I know me having a child with mental health issues, and without those CIT officers, them coming to get my son could have ended in a totally different way. So I know the good things that are being done, but I don't want us to ignore when there's some other infractions going on and people just don't want to talk about them.
Tara, if I could.
Yes,
Jeff,
please do.
Thank you. No, thank you for your comments. Reference change, I think, and I don't know, like I said, to be honest and frank, in terms of the cultural piece of it, was involved heavily whenever I was in the service director's office. And what we had done there was we went through what's called the change process. And we identified areas where we could improve public service, especially in the utility side of things back in the day. And I have to tell you, one of the biggest things that we did, I think the strongest things that we had done, one of the strongest was, in essence, that whole process was from the bottom up. We knew that, you know, if the top, and with all respect to the lieutenants and captains here and everybody, but in all sincerity, we went to, and it's a little different, obviously, for policing versus, you know, supplying water lines and repaving and stuff. It is a different process, and we have to understand that. But conversely, I don't think it's that different in terms of there's people out on the streets today who are doing, you know, the policing side, and that's such a tough job. And, you know, in terms of, and we were successful with regards to our change process, and a big portion of that was from the bottom up. And we listened to what the frontline folks was going through, and how we could help them along the way. And the change process is not easy. It can be a bit, you know, challenging across the board, but that's how we were successful. One of the key reasons was because we started from the bottom up.
Hey, Jeff, if I can ask, how did you get that information? How did you obtain that from the people that were, how'd you get that info?
Well, we basically surveyed, and we asked questions, and we brought in an outside group to kind of help and facilitate. You know, because if you're sitting across from, you know, your superior, and they're saying, hey, so tell me about your day to day, tell me about your this, tell me about your that, you know, it's not so, they may reserve some comments but you really want to get down to the nitty gritty. And a lot of it was, you know, we had to work with the unions, you know, to say, look, whatever's said, whatever's done is not going to come back to bite anyone or, you know, haunt them or whatever. But, you know, you bring out like an outside entity to help facilitate conversation. You build the trust. And you say, you know, this, you know, with the labor union, you know, that they were on board with us. And a lot of conversation, a lot of back and forth. And like I said, the true processes, that what really happens on the day-to-day basis, those folks that are on the front line, they know what's happening. They know what's going on out on the streets. And that's who you really should be listening to. So,
you know, I think that's a good idea, and certainly we should entertain more conversation about that. Some things that we are kind of doing that but they're kind of smaller, and I guess you know, we're talking about the entire department. But what we have done is we've created a survey for the people that just went into the basic academy, and those questions were, you know, let's talk about the background, let's talk about the physical. Were you prepared? Were you notified? So we can try to improve that process. And then what we've kind of done, and we're in the development of that now, is now that you've been hired, you've been through the basic academy, you've been part of the FTO process, you know, what was good about that? You know what I mean? What was bad about that? What we could do better? So in your example, I guess what you're saying is, you know, to expand it even further to the officer that's out on the street, to help them do their job better, what they think might be important for us. It's certainly worth further discussion.
thank you. Yeah, and you have to include the middle management side of things as well. And it's got to be, like I said, for us back in the day, it was a whole initiative. It was a whole thing that, you know, we communicated from the top down, everybody in between, but we had to have help. We had to have somebody come from the outside to help guide, and that's, you know, it should be discussed further. Thank you for your comments, though, Lieutenant. I appreciate that.
Councilwoman, I know you're working off your cell phone, so you're not seeing everybody at once.
Yeah, I'm not.
I can see that one of the interns, Trevon Richardson, has his hand raised. Did you have a question?
Yes. You're on mute, Trevon.
Yes, I did have a question for Captain Betzel. So we all know that it is like trying times to be a police officer, and there's a lot of pushback from society on police and law enforcement. I think for like a better understanding, could you just like give some themes that you may go through during roll call? Probably like mentioning like de-escalation or just how that goes.
You're speaking about roll call training, Trevon? What we talked about?
Yes.
Okay, so we do a lot of, if you in specific with de-escalation, that's something that we talk about all the time. But but with my roll calls, I will often talk to them about making a friend today. We will do with the Snack with the Cop program. We talk about how to treat citizens. We'll even discuss calls and, you know, what we did right, what we did wrong. There's a lot of back and forth. And then my favorite thing is to always make sure that I'm sending the officers out on the street with something positive right before they leave. We start our roll calls, you know, always trying to focus them on and center them by doing the Pledge of Allegiance. I want to make sure they understand they're here because they're serving their country, and then we go from there. So, you know, roll calls are more than just passing out information in terms of what, you know, what areas need service in the city. They're for lifting up the spirits of the guys. They're for making sure that they understand their role. So we do a lot of that. And we do also, anytime anybody goes to an in-service training or a SWAT training, we have them do in-service, we have them give their whatever it was they learned to the rest of the group. So we all try to learn off each other continually, because training is expensive and we don't have the benefit to send everybody to all the training. So if we do send people to training, it's their responsibility to bring it back to everybody else. Did I answer your question, or do you need anything more specific?
No, I think that was very good. Thank you.
Mhm.
Hey, Trevon, can I expand a little bit on that, please?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So what I do is I'm a lieutenant down here in the training bureau. And one thing that I think that we could do a better job as, you know, Captain Beitzel talks about her roll call training, and I'm sure Captain Yowie and Shanae, and they really do it independently. You know what I mean? And they're talking about things amongst their shift and doing training. What we could do a better job of is having a more standard push of roll call training coming from the training bureau. And some of that just has to do with technology, not knowing, you know, not having sometimes the resources to put short videos together and stuff like that. Something that I would like us to be able to do, even if there are 3 or 5 minute videos that we could push out to roll call, just so that we're standardizing, you know, the message, what we're putting out there. Because like you said, Captain Beitzel might be doing a real good thing on the noon to 8 shift. We would like to get that amongst the different shifts. So that is something that down here I'd like us to do a little better job, is just to standardize roll call training, short little videos. But anyways, that's what I want to tell you.
What would that look, may I, Madam Chair, what would that look like in terms of the technological piece?
Well, I mean, I really think it's just something where we would, you know, depending on what the subject was. I mean, we had something that was very easy. I mean, we got new tasers. Now this is just more like a technical thing here, but we got new tasers, and part of this new tasers was the new holster, and the new holster had a different way to carry a different cartridge, a different, you know, but we didn't have time, or by the time we got them, they were coming out on the street already, you know, for the new cartridge. So it'd been nice if I could have put together a little training video just showing, you know, where to put it on your vest, how it works. I know they talked about it amongst the shift, but I would have liked to have some type of, you know, some little short video that could be played during the roll call, that could be played when the officers are in their car. They can sign off that they watched it. We could even have them answer 1 or 2 or 5 questions about the little roll call training that we gave them. Something that simple.
That's great. Captain, whenever the roll call, and I haven't been in the roll call room for a while, I apologize for that.
You need to come see us, Jeff.
I know. It's been a while, but is there a big screen in there? Is there a big screen TV type?
We have 2. They're not big screens. Well, we have 2 TVs that are in either corner. So yeah, we're set up to be able to do some roll call training that way. Of course, it would always be nicer to have a bigger screen so we can more socially distance and be further away from each other. But yeah, we're set up.
But you know, and I know it's lowest and best bid, but nowadays you can get big screens for, you know, not a whole lot. You know, they're
Right.
pretty inexpensive in all sincerity, and you know, to have the technology to be able to do that remotely again is, I can understand that, and it seems like that would be like a quick win, that we can, you know, put something together here to try to help, at least on that side.
You know, and honestly, what Lieutenant Forty is talking about is awesome. You would be surprised at how much training means to these guys. It's the one thing they want the most. For me to to turn in training slips, and then I have to deny them because we don't have the money to send them somewhere. But they love the additional training because it makes them better. It makes their jobs easier. They love being given those kinds of tools. So anything that we can do in terms of training puts them out on the street better mentally prepared and just better equipped all the way around.
Well, I understand what Lieutenant Forney's saying about the quick hits, if you will, like
Yeah,
during,
absolutely.
yeah, like a 4 or 5 minute something or other to communicate what needs to be learned. That's great.
Yep.
So yeah, whatever we can do to help with that regard, I think would be a positive, obviously, for everyone. So let us know.
Captain Beitzel, how long are your roll calls normally?
Mine tend to be longer than most. Honestly, my roll calls will last anywhere from 10 minutes to 20 to 25 minutes if we're talking about anything that is substantial. If we're doing some training, it could be longer. But we do have to be cognizant of the fact that there is a shift out there that is by itself. When my shift comes in, the day shift is the only shift on the street, and
Okay.
it depends on how many calls are waiting.
Okay, and what time is your roll call?
11 o'clock, 11 a.m.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Also, Madam Chair, if I could, I can give you a brief update on what we had discussed at our last meeting. If it's okay at this time, reference the
Yes.
recruit.
And we have to approve those meeting minutes as well. I totally skipped past that.
I got you. I'd like to make a motion at this point that we accept the minutes of the last meting.
Second.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay.
All right, thank you. But yeah, I had a discussion with Don Rice.
Okay.
And they're very interested in this. And for those of us that are new to the meetings here, what it amounts to is we're trying to develop an idea program that would help recruit potential police officers earlier. Oftentimes what we do is we try to get those that are 21 and over. You can't become a peace officer until age 21 because you can't carry a gun until you're 21. However, though, what we're doing is developing a pipeline or a pathway, better yet, for younger ones to be able to kind of get into the system, the city system, and also to be dealing with the public, perhaps learning a little bit more about policing. Last time Captain Beitzel mentioned something about, maybe some points can be added if someone goes through a 3-year, 2-year program, even while they're going to school. We talked about some of that. So I believe at the next meeting, if it's okay, Chair Samples, I think he's willing to come in, Don Rice,
Oh, yes.
have further discussion. So that would be on the 29th, I believe. So,
Okay.
yeah, thank you.
Yes,
But there is interest from the HR side.
that's great to hear. Very good. Yeah. Okay. Maybe we can reach out to Stark State. I know Mr. Mullen retired. Maybe we can reach out to get them on one of these calls as well before we wrap it up, to talk a little bit more about them, what that would look like as far as having those individuals go through their program too, as it relates to the social services component, since they have a agreement with the city. We could probably get them involved. I think that would be great as well. So, okay. Does anyone else have anything to add for the betterment of this committee? I'm looking forward to going to paint. I've been painting all day. This is my fun right here.
I can see that both of our interns have hands raised. If you
Sorry.
Okay, I got Shelby.
I just have a quick question for Captain Betzel. So it sounds like you do a lot of really good work in your roll calls with just making sure that you're sending out like your officers with positivity. Do you think that that helps to create a healthier work environment? And do you think that those longer calls are a little bit more beneficial and that we should try to make those a little bit more standard across the department?
Roll calls are the captain or the shift commander sets the tone, sets the culture for the shift. And so, you know, that's the thing each shift commander gets to have on their own. I do think my shift has the benefit of also working during the day. The types of calls that they take are a little bit different than the night shifts. And I said this, and I don't think it was this work group, it was the other one, but I do send them out with a positive attitude. But honestly, the citizens of Akron are what keep their positive attitude. They frequently will stop them and say how much they appreciate them, and so it's not that they're always depressed because they have to go out and do their job. The citizens are great in this city and supporting their police department. But in terms of a roll call, I do think it's very important that the last thing they hear when going out the door is "have a great day" or something that's positive, you know, to focus on, because we're getting invited to everybody's worst day. Like nobody calls us and has us come to their house and say, "Hey, I'm having a great day. Why don't you stop by?" It's, you know, this is potentially the worst day of my life and I need you to fix it for me. And we do that every single day, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day for 25 years. So that compounds over and over and over again. So it's really important that they try to hear something positive throughout the day, or else that accumulative stress, I mean, if we want to talk about, you know, what can change a culture, that can.
Thank you.
Trayvon, do you have anything else that you want to add?
Yeah. Is it Mr. Fight? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes.
So during the hiring process, I understand that candidates can receive extra points for being a veteran, having college experience. I don't know off the top of my head what those points are. I do know that the college credits like tend to be lesser points. I was just wondering, like, do you feel personally that those points should be higher, considering only about a quarter of the population in Ohio has a college degree?
Good question. That's a good question. And I think that's left up to maybe a charter change or an HR change to make that weigh a little bit more. Residency and military is 20 points each. You can get a maximum of 40 points per applicant. The college credits are a graduated credit, depending on what type of degree you have. And that's interesting. That's been talked about, but we also want to keep open the ability for those that haven't had the opportunity to go to college to get hired. So I think that's why they don't weigh as much as military and residency points. I think that's the premise behind it.
Do you think that we would benefit from having more college graduates apply to be a police officer?
Sure, education is great. And I do think that college graduates would be a benefit to the police department. But I also think that those with the real life working experience that may not have the opportunity to go to college also are great applicants and can become great police officers. So I see it both ways. All I want is a good qualified candidate. And most commonly, when we have an eligibility list, we work through that list so everybody has an opportunity to become an Akron police officer that's on that list. So usually we exhaust the list before the list expires.
Okay, do we have any further questions or comments? I'm scrolling through my phone.
I don't see anybody's hand raised
Okay.
at the moment, if
Okay.
that helps.
Right. It's so difficult on the phone. It's crazy.
I do now.
Um,
I can see that Councilman Fusco has his hand
Oh,
raised
okay.
now.
I'm sorry, Councilman Fusco.
Well, I think we all need to make roll call. I say we
Right.
schedule a day and time.
Absolutely.
all
We
make
will
roll-
schedule a day and we're coming to roll call.
I want to know who's
Reporting for
coming to
duty.
the 11 o'clock PM roll call.
Oh, I want to come at 11 o'clock in the evening.
me.
That's
Okay.
when I want to come.
All right.
We've done that before. That was
Yes, we
something
have.
else.
We've been there.
We've
Been
done
there.
that. Okay,
Thank you.
so we'll reach out to you all because I definitely think we should attend roll call during the day and the evening. I think that would be beneficial to us. We've done the ride along, but I think roll call is something I definitely want to partake in. And then I'll reach out to Trayvon and Shelby and see if they want to come and hang out with me, and we can come over to roll call and see how things operate over there. And before we close, I want to thank you, Lieutenant Fight, Lieutenant Fournier, and Captain Bite. So I know sometimes this work can get a little overwhelming and frustrating for all of us, but I think that we all have the best interests of this community and people in mind. And I think that's why we'll be able to do some great things here. With that, if I could get a motion for adjournment.
So move.
I have a motion and I have a, and
Second.
can I get a second?
A
Okay,
second.
and a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, all right, thank you guys, you have a good evening.